It will forever sting that the Pokemon games based on my home country are the ones widely considered to be the worst. Of course, they're actually only the second worst because they at least don't stop you every 5 minutes for a Metal Gear Solid 2 length cutscene, but hey, I've already covered this five years ago. Considering that it's been about 5 years since I last talked about these games, you may be wondering, why wait until now to make a video like this? Well, good question, viewer. It's because my bank account's empty. So while I wait, likely in vain, for my country's economy and infrastructure to stop spiralling the ninth circle of hell for 5 minutes so I can get some kind of job in the arts, let's embark on an ambitious literary journey. Let's attempt to fix whatever the hell that story was in Pokemon Sword and Shield. More or less 5 years later, here are some fun facts about me. I am, unfortunately, still a Pokemon fan, I am, unfortunately, still British, and I am currently £9,000 in debt to my government because I spent 3 years at the University of Roehampton getting a degree in creative writing. Therefore, I believe that I am the perfect person to take up this mission. Pokemon Sword and Shield are obviously very flawed games. You don't need me to tell you that. But its story is honestly maybe the worst thing about it. Honestly, forget Dexit, forget the reused animations, forget the barely functioning physics and weather in the wild area. I think the story is actually its biggest glaring issue. Wait, I just remembered the experience share is still like that and it's happening again. It's bad, is what I'm saying. I don't think I realised quite how bad at the time, but in hindsight, and especially after the release of Scarlet and Violet, which fictionally has an incredible final act, maybe the most emotionally affecting in series history, it looks downright laughable. Sword and Shield have like the story equivalent of Scarlet and Violet's gameplay. Its story is like when you fly over Casseroya Lake and everything just starts exploding. If you look at it closely for like literally 5 seconds, everything just breaks. And we're gonna fix it. Strap in, viewers, we've got a lot of work to do. This is rewriting Pokemon Sword and Shield. Let's just get a few things in order before we dive in. This is obviously a video based on story, but there will be a few mentions of some gameplay changes I'd make here and there, because in lots of cases gameplay and story are intertwined, and it's important to make some changes to support the story I'm trying to tell. A couple petty things I would change about the gameplay just because they bother me and it's fun. I would make the game a whole lot less linear. For one, there is literally no reason for the game to railroad you through every city in the game one after another without letting you go ahead before beating the gym leader, when the wild area is literally right there. Being able to go ahead to Ballonlea and explore before you beat the gym leader in Stow on Side is not a game-breaking disaster you need to protect me from when I can literally bump into Tyranitar by accident as soon as I gain access to the wild area and before I've even gotten my first badge. I would also open up the route design a lot more so the routes don't feel so obnoxiously linear. Just a few more alternative paths and God, just a bit more to actually discover and explore. I don't know, it doesn't need to be much, just something. And while we're on this note, Route 10, get out of here. God, what a shambolic excuse for a Victory Road. It's not even called Victory Road, which I hate. We're fixing that. This is Victory Road and it is no longer snowing for literally no reason. It makes zero geographical sense how this frosty, snowed over tundra is directly connected to Wyndon, which is totally normal weather-wise. I mean, Pokemon has been bad at this in the past a lot. Hello, Snowbell City and the surrounding areas. But this is maybe the most nonsensical it's ever been. I mean, look at this clip of the player walking from Route 10 into Wyndon. It just looks dumb, doesn't it? Like there's a straight line where the snow just stops. It feels like they were just reaching for an area to put more ice-type Pokemon in, but you've got the whole wild area. You've got the area surrounding Sirchester. You'll have to figure it out. If Wyndon is inspired by London, then if anything, it should be raining, and that's what Route 10 will be. It will be called Victory Road, and it will be an open series of rainy plains where you'll navigate through old castle ruins to make it to Wyndon. I'm trying not to be like, hey, just make sweeping vast improvements to the game under the same time constraints, but like this is urgent, to be honest. It's one of the first things I'd change about the game. It falls so flat as a supposed final gauntlet as it is. Finally, I'd take the modern EXP share and throw it into the sun. That's it! Now, in my rewriting of this game's story, I want to keep changes within reason. It's all well and good to write a story where the villain pulls a gun on you in the final confrontation and then gets eaten alive by an Arbok, and then you become the villain and rule the world as the leader of the new evil team, but that's not realistic and it's not in line with the identity of the game. I am going to try and keep pretty consistent with what Sword and Shield were going for narratively, and my big sweeping changes are going to be few and far between. The problem is that Sword and Shield story is such a muddled mess that it's genuinely hard to tell what it was going for, but I'm going to do my best. In order to gather footage for this video, I obviously watched a lot of Let's Plays, and I found a pretty amazing moment in Marilyn's Let's Play. During the section towards the end of the game where Leon is late to meeting you and Hop because he's held up at Rose Tower, when Piers and Hop suggest that they're going to go to the tower with Team Yell and make a real ruckus, even Marilyn, who always tries to be super positive and upbeat, as if he can't stop himself, goes,
"What?"
Because it doesn't make any sense. We'll talk about this more later, but Sword and Shield story is full of characters just doing things that don't make any sense for no reason other than that the plot needs them to. Certainly not because they have any real motivations. In order to try and identify the core tenets of Pokemon Sword and Shield story that we must maintain, a quick plot recap I think is necessary. I'm going to go pretty fast here because we're going to go beat for beat on my new story once we get to it, so here we go. At the beginning of the game, you're introduced to Hop, the champion Leon's younger brother, who wants to go and meet Leon after another successful championship defense with you. Shortly after this, you have an encounter with the game's box legendary in the Slumbering World. Then, you get your start Pokemon, and the professor convinces Leon to sponsor you and Hop as trainers. There's a lot of mention of the Dynamax phenomenon throughout, something that causes Pokemon to grow huge and kaiju-like during battles. The professor gives you the means to Dynamax yourself, and you're off. There's also Sonia, who's the professor's granddaughter and apparently adventured with Leon in the past. Three of you travel through the wild area for the first time and make it to the city of Motorstoke. In Motorstoke, you sign up for the gym challenge, meet some rude young kid named Bede, and then go and chill in the hotel until the gym challenge officially starts the next day. Back at the hotel, Sonia gives you a lore dump by a statue and explains an event called the Darkest Day that happened in Galar's past, where some kind of mysterious black storm broke out that caused giant Pokemon to somehow rampage all over the place before a hero with a sword and a shield saved everyone. There's also this group of hooligans called Team Yell who battle you and then get talked down by this girl called Marnie, who it seems they're all following. She apologises, you're off to bed, the opening ceremony takes place the next day. We get a look at Chairman Rose, who is the chairman of the Pokemon League in Galar. You have a quick meeting with Rose afterwards, who thinks you have a lot of potential, seeing as you were endorsed by Leon. Now you're off to get your first badge, passing through a mine and encountering that rude guy Bede from earlier. He's super cocky, he's basically the rival from Gen 2. He's apparently collecting these things called wishing stars for the chairman. You beat him and move on to Turfield. You talk some more in Turfield with Sonia about the Darkest Day and learn basically nothing new. That will be a pattern. In the next city, you meet Chairman Rose again, with Bede by his side, who seems desperate to impress him. His assistant Oleana is also in tow. He wants to talk to you in the restaurant after you've gotten your second gym badge, and when you go to the restaurant, Sonia's there as well. Good thing too, because Rose literally just talks to her the whole time. He tells her that if she's interested in learning more about Dynamaxing, and she is, she should check out the vault in Hammerlock. That's it. Glad you showed up, huh? Another battle with Bede and one battle with Marnie later, and nothing else really happens until you get to the city of Hammerlock, where you meet Chairman Rose again. He explains that the gym there doubles up as an energy plant which powers all of Galar and that he runs. You go to the aforementioned vault where Sonia is, and the tapestry here seems to suggest that the supposed hero who saved Galar during the Darkest Day was in fact two heroes, wielding a sword and shield respectively. Anyway, Hop keeps getting his ass beat, and after your fourth badge, Sonia wants to show you this mural in town, and bam, Bede has smashed the mural with one of Chairman Rose's Pokemon because he thinks there's wishing stars behind it. Sure enough, the chairman shows up and disowns Bede for his recklessness and bans him from participating in the gym challenge. After all the others leave, the mural actually falls apart and reveals that it does in fact have that dog in it. Two of them. Sonia ponders what two dogs holding a sword and shield each could possibly mean in relation to what you learned earlier. After you beat the 5th gym leader Opal, she goes back to Hammerlock for her own business, takes you with her, spots an agitated Bede, and decides to take him under her freaky wing. You talk to Sonia, get cut off by an explosion, Leon shows up, suspects Rose is testing something, says he'll go handle it. Sonia says there seems to be a power spot in town, which means Pokemon could just start Dynamaxing nearby. That seems like a problem. Anyway, things just kind of stop happening for a really long time now. In Spikemouth, where the 7th gym is, you meet Marnie's older brother and the founder of Team Yell called Piers, who, despite appearances, is a pretty cool guy. Notably, he's the only gym leader who doesn't Dynamax their Pokemon, which seems to say something about his character, but nothing ever really comes of it. I like this touch. We'll come back to this later. When you leave Spikemouth, there's another loud explosion, and yet again, Leon's just like, I'll go handle it. Cool. Hop says he saw a glowing red light and Pokemon started Dynamaxing all over the place. Seems like a huge, maybe even catastrophic problem, but I don't see shit, so I guess I'll just have to take your word for it. Bye! Back to Hammerlock, where there's no damage despite giant Pokemon that were dealt with off-screen by Leon apparently rampaging nearby. Sonia says they were Dynamaxing without a power spot. The professor, who you might have forgotten existed, shows up and says the red light might have something to do with the darkest day. Then you just do the 8th gym. Don't worry about it. We go through dog-ass Route 10 and make it into Wyndon and start working our way through the Championship Cup matches for a shot at Leon. Sure enough, you make it to the finals and Leon invites you for dinner at the Wyndon Hotel that night. He never makes it though, because apparently he's been summoned by Chairman Rose and has spent all evening in his tower. This makes Hop and Piers, who is also there, act really irrational and you go and fucking storm the place. Rose's assistant, Oleana, shows up and tells you that they're just in a meeting, which seems sensible to be honest, and despite that, you do a bunch of busy work to get on the monorail to go to Rose Tower anyway. You make it to the top and battle Oleana. And now, you finally get to see what Rose and Leon are up to. Rose informs Leon that Galar's energy supply will run out in 1,000 years, which will cause some kind of unfathomable disaster, and he wants Leon to get on board with a plan that will stop that happening, though it will require the championship tournament to be cancelled. Leon, quite rightly, is like, can it not wait literally one day? And Rose is kind of like, not really, even though it's 1,000 years, I don't know, not really. And Leon's like, right, I'm going to do the tournament and I'll get back to you on this. Tomorrow, during the tournament finals matches, Bede storms on the field and demands a match with you. He is now, after Opal's tutelage, the fairy gym leader of Galar. He loses again. You go through what is functionally the Elite Four in the form of some gym leader rematches in a kind of tournament format, and finally, you're up for your championship match with Leon. Except it's not, because Rose shows up on screen and lets you know that he's bringing about Galar's darkest day again. Yep, these pink energy beams start shooting out of the stadium and apparently in every stadium across the region, presumably Dynamaxing nearby Pokemon. Sounds pretty apocalyptic, but the game never shows you this actually happening even once, so I guess everyone's fine. Leon goes off to try and stop Rose. You and Hop go all the way back to your hometown from the very start of the game. Whilst this is all happening, I guess just ignoring and escaping the rampaging kaiju along the way, because you've decided that the heroes who saved Galar from the darkest day before were probably the box legendaries you encountered in the slumbering world way back when. I mean, you were right, but like, Jesus. You go in and find them and then they fuck off again because they don't want anything to do with this fucking story. Further in the world, at an altar, you find an old sword and shield and take one each. You travel all the way back to Hammerlock again now, I guess just assuming that an old relic sword and shield will be useful, and Oleana of all people begs you to help. Apparently, all her Pokemon Dynamax then went crazy. Weird, I don't see anything. She begs you to go down into the energy plant part of the 8th Gym Stadium and stop Rose. Chairman Rose, to the best of my understanding, has been feeding wishing stars to a dormant Pokemon called Eternatus, which is itself the darkest day, in the hopes of awakening it, because Eternatus is a permanent energy source that could solve Galar's 1,000 years away energy crisis. And that because Eternatus is the energy that makes Pokemon Dynamax, has made all the Pokemon Dynamax like crazy. Whatever, man, I'm pretty checked out at this point. It seems that apparently part of his plan was getting Leon to capture and eventually restrain Eternatus so that I guess they could harness the energy and solve the crisis. You take the lift up to find Leon on the roof trying to fight Eternatus and losing. You join in, seem to win, and then it Eternamaxes, which is a unique form of Dynamaxing that only it can do, into a big meaty claw. All hope seems lost because it now emits this weird energy that seems to stop you from using any moves. Hop pulls out the sword and shield for some reason, which summons the dogs who show up and save the day. You finally get to battle Leon as you'd originally intended. You beat him and become the champion at last. Rose apparently turned himself in. Happy days, the end. No, seriously, that's not an elaborate joke. That was it. That was the story of Pokemon Sword and Shield. If it didn't really seem to make much sense, don't worry. It didn't. You know, when you analyse a story and what went wrong, usually it's very multifaceted. There's tons of different parts and elements that don't work, and it's this tangled mess of flaws that need to be unwound. Pokemon Sword and Shield exists as perhaps the most bizarrely top-heavy piece of fiction I've ever seen in terms of where its flaws come from. Why do I say this? Well, let's talk about Chairman Rose. Chairman Rose is not just the worst villain in Pokemon history, he might be the worst character in Pokemon history. I say with no exaggeration that every single thing that surrounds him in this game's story is a fucking disaster. I want to play a game, viewer. Let's play a fun game I came up with. It's called Dark Souls 3 Final Boss Theme or Chairman Rose Boss Theme. It's pretty simple. I'm going to play the intro of a song and you tell me whether that's the theme to the final boss of Dark Souls 3 or the Chairman Rose fight from Pokemon Sword and Shield. You ready? Okay, here we go. So, as you have probably guessed, yes, that was indeed the final boss theme of Dark Souls 3. A boss theme that is perhaps 50% as dramatic as Chairman Rose's battle theme, because listen to this shit. How depressing is it to think that when you get to this battle in the game and you hear this song for the first time, you still feel nothing. The grandiosity of this theme song, the incredible aesthetics of the battle are totally unearned and undeserved by this character and the stakes of the story. This is our #1 goal in this video, to make a character who is deserving of this song and who battling will actually elicit some emotion from you. Because having just heard this, let's keep in mind what Chairman Rose's plans and motivation are in Sword and Shield. It's very messy, but I'm going to try and keep up. Chairman Rose is somehow in possession of the Pokemon that, fun fact, and this often gets missed, he named Eternatus. He named it that because of his belief that it could be Galar's eternal energy source. Originally, it was just this unidentifiable creature that emitted huge amounts of energy and caused what we now know as the Darkest Day, when its energy made a bunch of Pokemon Dynamax and rampage throughout the region. Rose knows that Eternatus works like this somehow, so even though it nearly brought the region to ruin eons ago, he wants to reawaken it so that Leon can capture it and its energy can be harnessed long term to avoid some far off disaster for Galar. And I guess his justification for doing this, in spite of the disaster it will cause right now by causing Pokemon to grow huge and unruly, is that sacrifices have to be made for the region's long term prosperity. There is still no justification, however, for why he has to do this specifically on the day of the Galar Championship Finals. He doesn't even try and explain it when Leon, quite rightfully, is like, can it not wait even one day? You just get characters talking about how he hates to wait for stuff and he always believes that there's no time like the present, which is obviously flimsy at best and batshit insane at worst. Rose spends the entire game being this relatively normal guy who just decides to be completely insane one day. Like he's playing GTA and he's been driving around like an ordinary driver obeying all the traffic laws, and then he randomly just swerves onto the pavement and mows down 200 people. In the extended media, we're talking the manga and anime, they actually make a pretty crucial change to Rose's character in that the supposed Galarian energy crisis is not 1,000 years away, but 10 years away. And that is a pretty big change. It does a lot to increase the urgency of Rose's plan. And yet, even so, it still does not make sense as to why Rose absolutely cannot wait a single day. You would have to make it 1 year away for that to even possibly make sense to me. And if that were the case, it'd be hard to believe that other people like the Professor and Sonia don't at least have some inkling about it, and that the region doesn't look to be in much worse shape than it is. Reducing the timer to 10 years is a common idea I hear about fixing this game's story, and I get it, but for the reasons I've just outlined, for Rose's total inability to reasonably be capable of waiting a single extra day, I don't think it's salvageable. This is the biggest change I'll be making to the story overall. This impending energy crisis thing has to go. There is no way to make Rose's actions make sense in my mind with this as his motivation. Beyond this, it also feels a little bit derivative of Lysander, who comes a couple generations prior in X and Y. They're not exactly the same, but Lysander's motivations also stem from a belief that there aren't enough resources to go around and that drastic action needs to be taken for the betterment of the region, of the world. Lysander was not a particularly good villain either, but in this ideal world where I'm rewriting Sword and Shield, I've also rewritten X and Y and made him good too. Particularly, I've fleshed him out a lot more and made his plan make more sense. If I were writing a new Pokemon villain from the ground up, with no context on any pre-existing villains, I think I would probably end up with something quite a lot like Lysander. Because in the world of Pokemon, this idea of being concerned about the scarcity of resources when they have to be shared between humans and Pokemon opens up quite a lot of possibilities and can go quite a lot of interesting places. It certainly opens up a lot more interesting possibilities than, is it wrong to keep and battle Pokemon, because this is a Pokemon game, and obviously you're only ever going to end it by basically saying, no, it's fine. They objectively like it, and oh god, it's pulling me back in again, I can't stop it. What I'm saying is, in this ideal world where someone with a writing degree and not an overworked Japanese game designer who hasn't seen their family in 8 weeks is writing the story, we've already done a there aren't enough resources to go around, let's do some crazy shit story with Lysander, so we want to go in a different direction with Chairman Rose. Let's establish the tentpoles of Pokemon Sword and Shield story that we acknowledge as important to the game's identity and will be keeping largely the same. Eternatus is an alien Pokemon that arrived in Galar on a meteor long ago. In the games and extended media, there's a lot of confusing stuff thrown around about wishing stars and Galar particles. Wishing stars are part of Eternatus' body that fall off of it from time to time, especially when it's damaged. They can be fit into a Dynamax band and allow trainers to Dynamax their Pokemon. But there's also Galar particles, which are just a kind of energy that exist in Galar. They are also produced in practically endless quantities by Eternatus. Apparently they come from the Wishing Stars, which is confusing. Apparently, upon its original defeat by Zacian and Zamazenta in the past, it had to absorb tons of Galar particles just to stay alive and be able to go dormant, but absorbing all of them makes it Eternamax, so it generates all the energy of Galar, but can also absorb it all and actively wants to? And it only generates the particles when it's awake, and also high concentrations of Galar particles create power spots where Pokemon can Dynamax with the use of a Wishing Star, and could you see how fucking confusing this is and how many buzzwords there are? I think it's Rose's completely incomprehensible plan that makes Eternatus seem more confusing than it is, and because we're doing away with the whole energy crisis thing, we're also going to do away with the Galar particles as well. Eternatus is an alien Pokemon that arrived in Galar on a meteor a long time ago. Its very presence and the nondescript energy it emits makes Pokemon Dynamax in its presence when it's awake. Wishing Stars are part of its body that can be obtained by trainers and used to Dynamax, and Power Spots are simply places where there were high concentrations of Eternatus' energy where Pokemon can Dynamax if you have a Wishing Star. That's it. That's about as simple as we can make Eternatus, I think. The Darkest Day is still an event that happened in Galar's past. Eternatus still went into a long slumber after getting beaten up by the dogs. That being said, I do not want the impending return of the Darkest Day to be the big dramatic endgame of Sword and Shield. This is a storytelling device that Pokemon and RPGs by and large lean on a lot, and I think it's very played out. There was a big catastrophic disaster that happened thousands of years ago, and for a bunch of reasons it might happen again today, and now you're going to have to be the one who stops it this time. It's boring, it's trite, and I think it's really quite lazy. I'm a little bit over Pokemon having dramatic, apocalyptic, world-ending scenarios in their main stories in general, to be honest. As a player, it all gets a bit much. It's impossible for the player to relate to and get invested in stuff like this because of how over the top it all is. I'd like a story where the drama is really about the characters and their relationships. I'd just like a bit more pathos, and for the stakes to be found at a more intimate level. You might be thinking, oh, check this guy out, thinking he can turn Pokemon into War and Peace. But the thing is that Pokemon has told a story exactly like this before. It's called Scarlet and Violet. And it's because of that focus on character-based drama over spectacle that its final few hours are so affecting. Yes, there are very dangerous consequences looming if you lose the final battle, in that Paradox Pokemon could rampage through modern Paldea, but it's not really the focus, and it's not what makes this final act work. It's the character drama of what the Professor has done, what that means for Arven and you and your relationships. This is what makes the game's story work, and I think the game knows it. So I would say we flagged up 3 crucial things about the story here. The Darkest Day as an event is more or less entirely the same. Dynamaxing works the same, Eternatus works mostly the same, except Galar particles are no longer a thing that exist, and thus Galar does not face an impending energy crisis. Cool, let's talk about the League Challenge and the way Galar handles gyms and the championship. It's perfect, and we're keeping it exactly the same. It's a brilliant reflection of England and its football culture, and it helps the region have its own identity. Everything about the League Challenge, from sponsorships to an opening ceremony to finals in Wyndham Stadium, stays. To this end, Chairman Rose is still the chairman of said league, obviously, and Leon, of course, is still the champion. Pretty much all the characters will have more or less the same pre-existing relationships with each other, and I guess this could be assumed with the Darkest Day being intact, but Zacian and Zamazenta will also be more or less the same with no radical changes being made to their role in the story, though I emphasise radical. I have some stuff in mind. And there you have it, the Darkest Day, Eternatus, Dynamaxing and the League Challenge. These, I would argue, are the 4 key pillars of Pokemon Sword and Shield story that must pop up and must be significant, even if we're going to make some alterations here and there. They all need to be here and given importance. Make sense? Something I want to do before we get into my beat-for-beat breakdown on the rewritten story is quickly break down some characters and just give you some thoughts on how they serve the story and what, if anything, needs to change. Leon as a champion is great, and I think he serves his purpose perfectly fine, but his big problem is that he is basically the actual main character of Sword and Shield. This dude runs off screen and does so much stuff crucial to the main story that you never see, it's kind of insane. He just kind of keeps robbing you of participation in the story. We're going to dial that back a bit. Hop is also mostly fine as a character and a rival. I like him well enough, but his character arc feels a bit derivative of rivals that have come before, particularly Cherin. Hop and Cherin are obviously different characters, but their arcs are pretty similar. They both have designs on being the champion, but after losing over and over again, they doubt themselves and find they don't really care about being the best so much as they do about just caring for Pokemon. Hop becomes a professor, or at least an assistant. Cherin becomes a gym leader and a teacher. There's nothing wrong with this for Hop, but there's nothing particularly right with it either. I just want something that stands out a bit more, and something that feels a bit more tied to Galar as a region. Sonia is pretty much just a version of the professor who travels with you. She's there to deliver exposition about the Darkest Day and Galar's history, and all that's fine. I think she needs to be portrayed as a bit more competent, though. At the end of the game, it's like you and Hop basically figure out what you have to do to save the day, and she never really gets to, like, figure anything out. Certainly not anything that isn't already blindingly obvious to anyone playing the game over the age of 10. Bede is the only character I am literally just keeping exactly the same. I actually think Bede is great in Sword and Shield. It is super refreshing to have a rival in a Pokemon game who's just a dick, and I think his arc is brilliant. Seeing him go from brash corporate suck-up to disowned loser, having his fragile ego and masculinity broken down and being reforged into the fairy-type gym leader by Opal is great. He ends up still being something respectable, but clearly a bit embarrassed and humbled along the way. Genuinely, I love it. No notes. Marnie and Team Yell, on the other hand, are probably the characters getting the second most changes behind Chairman Rose, because they don't really do anything. They are just total non-factors in the story. They have basically no impact whatsoever. Team Yell are fun and all, but they're clearly there just to satisfy the quota for an evil team in every game, whether the story necessitates that or there's even anything for them to do or not. They're not even evil, they're just like a group of guys. You could argue that they're a fun subversion of the evil team trope, but I think they're a damning indictment of the pointlessness of such a trope, forcing some supposed evil team into the game's story even when you clearly have no idea what to do with them. Marnie and her brother Piers have these super punky designs clearly inspired by the UK's well-known punk history, but they're just kind of objectively nice to you all the time. Yes, again, you could argue they're subversive in that sense, but subversion without intention is not smart. It's just a cheap trick that anyone can do. I don't need Marnie or Piers to be super mean and standoffish to you either, because Bede's already filling that role. We just need a bit more characterization for these guys. We'll work on it. Lastly, Oleana is a character who isn't seen much, but I think there's clearly something interesting here. Her team, as you may recall, is made up entirely of Pokemon that would be conventionally considered beautiful, but her ace is Garbodor. This is saying something about her character. The problem is that the game just never shows us what this is because she doesn't get to do anything, but I'm very interested in this premise and definitely want to do more with this. Finally, before we get into the granular details of the rewrite, I want to talk to you about themes. When I was going through my degree, I felt like I never really got themes. Like, I was told that stories had themes, but as dumb as it sounds, I never felt like I really understood why. Lots of stories are saying something or have a point, but that isn't necessarily the same as the theme. I don't know, it's one of those many nebulous concepts in writing that I've found kind of confusing, especially as a writer, because I was never thinking about themes when I was writing. I just kind of wrote what I wanted to and wondered if themes would happen. If I'd finish what I was working on and find that there were some kind of recurring elements bubbling under the surface of what I'd written that constituted themes. Having given it more thought and having listened to a lot of other smarter people than myself, this is the conclusion I've come to. Or at least, certainly, this is the way I look at themes. Themes are what you look to when you want to know what to do next in a story. The themes should inform many of your decisions. Not all of them, lest it become heavy-handed, but lots of them. And when you're not sure what direction to take next, the themes should serve as your guide. You should do something that in some way invokes the theme of your story. Pokemon has, I think, a pretty sketchy history with themes. Often the developers will talk up the themes they have in mind, but then not really commit to them in the games. Xerneas and Yveltal are the Pokemon of life and death respectively, but life and death and the balance between the two is not really a theme that is executed very well in X and Y. It doesn't feel like the story is being informed by these themes very often at all. Maybe that's because it never got the third game it deserved. Maybe it's because Junichi Masuda saw Charizard rendered in 3D and fell into an erection-induced coma for 6 months. Black and White are probably some of the stronger Pokemon games thematically, though that's still not saying much. Both the developers and the characters spent a lot of time talking up the themes of truth and ideals, and personally I just found it all a bit ham-fisted, though maybe I'm just turned off from it by how unnaturally the characters bring up these concepts in dialogue all the time. Show, don't tell. I don't care if you're marketing to kids, they can also be made to appreciate subtlety. We just gotta treat them with some respect for their intelligence, lest we lose them to sexist Twitch streamers and Subway surfers. So in this rewrite, we should establish a theme, not just because it's good practice, but because, frankly, Galar feels very lacking thematically. I honestly don't really know what they were going for in this department. In deciding a theme, I think we should let the setting of Galar itself dictate that theme. Galar, in case you somehow missed it or have the intellect of a Twitter blue check, is based on my home country of the United Kingdom. As such, I've given this a lot of thought. The British Isles have a long and storied history. My first thought was to expand on the way the games handle the League Challenge and go all in on sports. Maybe we do like a pseudo-sports anime kind of thing. But that felt kind of flimsy and not enough to sustain a whole story. That being said, we will be using some real-life parallels from the UK and Europe as a whole's football culture to inform some changes to Chairman Rose's character in the main story. Then I thought about war and conflict, which I think has some legs, but has kinda already been done in Kalos for X and Y, however wasted the idea may have felt there. It's funny that it's Kalos, the region based on France of all countries, that's already touched this topic, because France is surely the country that could most closely be compared to the UK. They have the closest kind of cultural identity, if you will. Both have these long and storied histories defined by war, colonialism, and monarchy, but their long histories make them epicenters of arts and culture. You could more reasonably compare the UK and France than almost any other two countries in the world, certainly in Europe, so it tracks that Galar could very realistically end up having some thematic overlap with Kalos. They're better at art and protest, we're more polite and have cooler accents. But it was when thinking about this that it dawned upon me. Our theme should be history. Specifically, the contortion and manipulation of history. The phrase, "history is written by the victors," comes to mind, often attributed to Winston Churchill himself, though its exact origin is unknown. I've seen some people suggest it was first said by George Orwell, also British. Let me give you guys a quick look into British and European culture that I hope you'll find fascinating, and because I love talking. The thing about Britain is that it is not honest about its history. When I was going through school, and indeed when lots of English kids were going through school, we learnt about the greatness of Winston Churchill, World War I, World War II, and as far as history class goes, that was about it. Maybe a bit of the Prohibition era. It wasn't until I left school and stepped out into the wider world that I realised the gravity of the things I didn't learn. I never learned that despite being a great wartime leader, Winston Churchill was not a good prime minister and not a good man. I didn't learn about the crucial role he played in the Bengali famine of 1943. I didn't learn about Britain's role in the disastrous partition of India some years after, and I certainly didn't learn about the troubles in Ireland and the IRA. Put simply, I didn't learn about all the times that Britain, specifically England, was obviously the bad guy. As it turns out, that was a lot of times, because we are not honest about our history. In countries like Germany, they have monuments and museums dedicated to their own past atrocities. They acknowledge their history and they seek to learn from it. There is a cultural acceptance in Germany of their own past, but I find there's no such thing here in England. For all the wrong reasons, I find this fascinating. I think it's absolutely a worthy theme to tackle in a children's game where you can catch Pikachu. It's an interesting subject to tackle with a light touch. History is written by the victors, and as such, it is often preserved in a way that is unfair and untrue. That's a hell of a theme, and something that I think has gone relatively unexplored in Pokemon. I understand if it seems like maybe I've done a lot of waffling so far in this video, but I assume if you clicked on a video called Rewriting Pokemon Sword and Shield that you were interested in hearing the philosophy and perspective of a writer and weren't foaming at the mouth for me to just get straight to the point with zero context and zero rationale given. I hate the age of bloated, overly long video essays where the quote-unquote creator is just stretching as much as possible for watch time more than anyone, trust me, but I also hate the TikTok-fueled rush for instant gratification I feel on YouTube lately too. I don't know why I feel the need to preempt myself in such a way. The YouTube comments could just be so miserable sometimes. Get to the point faster, I can hear you say. Buddy, the point is the worst part of my videos. It's all the insane shit I say in the lead up that's the good stuff. I guess I just hope you feel that what I've been saying so far is worthwhile and have found it as interesting to listen to as I have to talk about. I love talking about shit like this, about the intricacies and uncertainties of writing. If you really find yourself irritated at how long I've gone on this stuff and still haven't yet jumped into the finer details, well, fuck off. If I were writing a new project from the ground up, certainly one that I was excited about, this is the amount of care and attention I would give it. And whether it was being marketed to kids or adults wouldn't make a difference to how much thought I put into its themes and its characters, because everyone, regardless of age, deserves to be exposed to writing by someone who cares. Any topic, any theme can be written in a way that's digestible to any age group or demographic. Just because something's for kids, that doesn't mean you write it worse. You just write it differently. And with that, I'm finally ready to free you from the yap dimension and get on with this video's namesake. Now, we're going to get into the nitty gritty and break down beat by beat how I would rewrite Pokemon Sword and Shield. right after I tell you about Palette Swap Mag. Have I told you about Palette Swap Mag? I don't think I have, you know. But man, it's the best. It's a bunch of ex-hard drive guys and myself who have struck out on our own and started our own new thing. No AI, no douchebag executives, no problem. If you want the best, most ethical video game satire on the market, you can follow us at Palette Swap Mag on almost all socials, except Facebook, on which we're Palette Swap Magazine, and perhaps most importantly, you could subscribe to our YouTube channel, which I currently run, and where it's all me, baby. If you notice that I don't upload to this channel so much anymore, it's because I've been handling things on Palette Swap since March of this year. I've been making some stuff that I think you'll think is really cool and fun if you enjoy this video even a little bit, including a fully edited 4-hour plus video in which I attempt to rank the top 100 games of all time entirely by myself. Yes, it is exactly as insane as it sounds. No, Pokemon Sword and Shield is not on it. It's probably one of the best things I've ever done on YouTube, and you can literally go watch it and all the other cool stuff I've been doing on Palette Swap right now. Or after this video. Thanks. So, I'd actually pretty much keep the beginning of Sword and Shield the same. I mean, maybe I'd change Postwick so that it isn't a village of literally 2 buildings that you and your rival live in, but that's kind of besides the point. I like the first hour or so of Sword and Shield perfectly fine, and I don't really have much to change. I particularly like the early encounter with the box legendaries in the Slumbering World. I value stuff that feels new for Pokemon, and I don't recall you ever having an early encounter with the legendary like this. It's cool, it feels fresh, and it lends them a lot of mystique, I think. I will say, Hop does specifically need to describe the Pokemon you encountered in the Slumbering World as a dog-like Pokemon to Sonia when she first asks about it. It's kind of weird how non-specific he is in the original game anyway. Why does he just give her, like, nothing to go off? We're not set in America anymore, bro. You can use your words. My first real change is going to kick in the night before the opening ceremony of the gym challenge in Motorstoke. And it's a pretty simple one. When you battle Team Yell right after Sonia first explains the Darkest Day to you, Marnie won't show up and introduce herself. Team Yell will mention her name in passing and how much they're going to cheer her on and whatnot, but then they'll just leave of their own accord. I think this game gets pretty thick and fast with character intros and exposition here, and I just want to ease up a little bit. Instead, after your first meeting with Chairman Rose the following day, an encounter that pretty much goes exactly the same, after you leave, we'll see Marnie hanging around in the lobby having just watched your conversation and pan in on her a little bit, just teasing her as a character. Now we're off to Turfield, home of J.K. Rowling. I am going to keep the scene with Sonia at the Geoglyph the same because while I do find it pretty pointless, it's very short and relatively harmless. Plus, you can't have that fucking thing lying around and just not have anyone mention it. Okay, so you beat the gym as normal and move on to the bridge where there's a pair of Team Yell members harassing this guy to give him a bike who you beat up on. After you beat them, this is when Marnie shows up and admonishes them for harassing the poor man. Her attention then turns to you. She's a little cold to you. She saw Chairman Rose gassing you up after the opening ceremony back in Motorstoke and thinks it's a bit ridiculous that so many people are playing favourites with you already. Usually, when you've got that many of the rich and powerful singing your praises, she says, it's because you're shady. She then says she wants to know if you're actually legit or if they're all full of it, and this is where she challenges you to your first battle. As a side note, you battle Hop way too much in this game, so this first battle with Marnie replaces the battle you'd usually have with Hop here. I'm also taking out the second battle you have with Hop on Route 2 because I think that happened way too soon after your first battle. Okay, Marnie still seems pretty unconvinced and thinks it can't be that hard to succeed when you've got the whole machine backing you. She rounds up her boys and they leave, and soon enough you're in Holbury. Here, I'm taking out the whole Chairman Rose stuff. You don't see him, Oleana and Bede at the entrance, and there's no scene with them at the restaurant afterwards because that whole thing was done. When you get to Holbury, nothing happens. You just arrive and you're not bombarded with any characters yapping on at you upon arrival because I don't think that happens anywhere near enough in this game. Almost every new town you go to, especially in the early game, you get some cutscene with some character, usually Hop, prattling on about useless stuff, just repeating information you've already heard 1,000 times. Pokemon feels more like an adventure when you go hands off. It'd be nice to just go into a city once and just get to look around for yourself without any interruptions, so that's what will happen here. No Hop, no Rose, no Bede, no anyone. Of course, the gym is closed until you go and speak to Nessa over by the lighthouse, which is a similarly pointless scene that just tells you nothing. Given that we've just scrapped something, I'd like to add something here. Just a couple lines. Something. A crumb of world building. Nessa can mention that her mum was one of Galar's great sea captains. She used to deliver cargo to and from Kanto all the time, and Nessa used to go along on the boat. And as she wistfully looks out into the ocean, she remembers all the times she went. How she even got acquainted with a girl who would eventually become Kanto's water-type gym leader as a child. As a woman, her mum was somewhat of a trailblazer in Galar, being in such a male-dominated industry. She hopes she can live up to that legacy as a gym leader. There you go, easy. We have given Nessa one interesting facet to her character. That's one more than she had in the original games. After you beat the gym, we're getting rid of Hop ambushing you outside to talk about nothing again. Again, it's just nice to be left alone for a while, and we're obviously leaving in your next battle with Bede at Galar Mine number 2. Hop can still catch up with you later on in the mine to do the double battle with the Team Yell members, and then you're off to Motorstoke. The encounter and battle with Marnie in Motorstoke now doesn't happen. Instead, there's something else. When you go to challenge the gym, something's going on outside. Reporters and paparazzi snapping pictures, but of who? Well, I'm sorry to inform you, viewer, but I'm afraid I've got some bad news. I'm afraid it's Swordwood and Shieldbert. Listen, I know people have opinions on Swordwood and Shieldbert. I personally like them. I think they're kind of fun, but I get it. They're very dumb. However, in the extended media, Swordwood and Shieldbert are actually working in cahoots with Chairman Rose as secondary antagonists, so there's precedent for putting them in the main story here. And perhaps most importantly, their motivation as villains is actually really compelling. In fact, they have a way more interesting motivation than Rose ever did. I wish a better character than Rose with this motivation was the main villain of Sword and Shield. But alas, we've got to work with what we got. For anyone not in the know or who may have understandably forgotten, Swordwood and Shieldbert either believe or want everyone to believe that they are in fact the descendants of the legendary hero who saved Galar from the darkest day thousands of years ago. For the purposes of this story right now, this is the generally accepted truth, and as such, Swordwood and Shieldbert are practically celebrities, bombarded by the press everywhere they go and loving every second of it. Considering that our theme is history, these guys' motivation is perfect for implementation into our main story. So you and Hop, who are heading to the gym at the same time, both witness this. We get some exposition about Swordwood and Shieldbert, how they are the descendants of the legendary hero, and they're asked what they're doing in Motorstoke. They say they were devastated to miss the opening ceremony due to some important business, and want to make up for lost time by spectating some of the gym challenges here today. Hop, who's obviously a bit ignorant, is hearing about these guys for the first time, and he's ecstatic at the thought of the descendants of the legendary hero being there to watch him beat Kabu. Then you proceed through the gym challenge as normal. After you beat Kabu and go to leave Motorstoke, we're going to do away with this weird, pointless scene where Kabu and the other gym leaders see you off with a chant, and replace it with Swordwood and Shieldbert approaching to congratulate you and Hop. They say you looked very impressive out there, and hope to see you make it all the way to Winden. Watching the battles actually got them in the mood, and they say that if you happen to have some time on your way to Hammerlock, you'll be able to find them in the wild area for a battle if you want. I'm including this because I've scrapped a couple battles in the main story so far, and I want to put something in that will help keep your levels on the right track, and also because it's fun to be given something else to do in the wild area, and something new to battle. This is a totally optional battle. You can totally miss it if you want. I don't know where exactly they are in the wild area, but they're somewhere relatively nearby to Hammerlock, not too far off the beaten path, but far enough to encourage a bit of exploration. Their teams will actually be pretty tough for the levels you're at, around level 32 or so, but nothing undoable. They'll have a team of 3, with Swordwood's ace being a Surfetched and Shieldbert's being a Phalanx. You'll obviously face whichever one makes sense for the version you're playing, and when you beat them, they're a little surprised and actually seem a little angry. You get the sense that they only really asked you to battle because they thought they'd be able to beat you, and because they wanted to inflate their own egos. Regardless, they give you some nice item and bid you farewell, and now you're in Hammerlock. Or maybe you came to Hammerlock before you did this. Non-linearity is a beautiful thing. Once you're in Hammerlock, yes, you finally meet Chairman Rose again for only the second time, and this will also be your introduction to his assistant, Oleana. This is where the changes are going to start to ramp up even more. The initial dialogue between them and Bede plays out the same, though Rose won't mention needing the wishing stars from Bede for the sake of Galar's future, he just wants them in general, nor will he mention needing a strong trainer. Oleana takes Bede away, then Rose takes you inside the the stadium. He does tell you that Hammerlock Stadium will soon double as an energy plant, not that it already does. Construction, in fact, is still ongoing, which is why certain areas of the city like the Hammerlock Vault have had to be cordoned off for the time being. Obviously, in the original game, you can and do go to the Hammerlock Vault right away because Rose has told Sonia to, but not so here. You won't be going there just yet. Rose is excited at the prospect of the energy plant in Hammerlock, the centre of the region being able to deliver sustainable energy all over Galar. It might be their most ambitious project since Winden. A quick side note, a lot of the optional NPC dialogue in Sword and Shield is really dry, even for a Pokemon game. So while it's all totally missable, there are two things I want some of the NPCs to touch on at various points throughout the game. One is Rose's supposed rags to riches story. Supposedly he came from naught but a humble mining family and has built himself into the man he is today through sheer hard work and determination. Two, and this little bit of lore could probably be pieced together through the dialogue of multiple NPCs, but there's a little background story I want to tell. Lots of NPCs collectively will talk about a few times during the championships where it really looked like Leon might be on the ropes, how he was down to nothing but his Charizard, but then weirdly his opponent never Dynamaxed and ultimately lost. There's one story in particular that persists about a particular trainer who doesn't need to be named, we'll call him Harry, who absolutely looked poised to beat Leon, but then never Dynamaxed and lost. Harry apparently accused the league of foul play and left the region shortly after and was never heard from again. This is all optional stuff, totally missable, but it'll all make sense later on and it just gives the world a bit more flavour. Okay, back to it. That's right, says Rose. Maybe you didn't know, being young and all, but Winden, where the Championship Cup finals take place, was my creation. Rose tells you that he was its city builder and architect. It truly is his masterpiece. It's what made him the man he is now. Macrocosmos surely wouldn't have the funds to do the things it does now if the Winden project weren't a success. Certainly, he wouldn't have been the frontrunner for league chairman. You see, when construction on Winden finished 4 years ago and the championship stadium was established there was a total reset on the Pokemon League. The old chairman retired due to old age and Rose was picked as their replacement. And they needed to find a new champion too, and that's when the region discovered Leon. He's been Galar's unbeatable champion ever since Winden was built, for 4 years running now. The thought of getting to witness another exciting championship finals match in his beautiful jewel of a city is almost too much for Rose to contain. He wonders if maybe someone will finally knock Leon off his perch this time. If maybe it'll be you. Oleana whispers in his ear. Anyway, he says, I've been rambling long enough. Rose wishes you well and is sure you'll cross paths again soon. So ordinarily, once you leave the stadium after this, you bump into Leon, who then urges you to go and introduce yourself to Raihan in the vault. Of course, you're not going to the vault yet, so here you're just going to bump into Raihan himself instead. Raihan says he's ducking out of the gym for a bit because he hasn't got any challenges at the moment and he can't record any videos with all the noise that the energy plant construction's making. He's a bit peeved in general that Rose got the go-ahead on the energy plant project when he was opposed to it. Regardless, he sees that you've got 3 gym badges and congratulates you, but that means your destination isn't here and you won't be challenging him for a while. He instead points you to Stow Side to the west for your 4th gym challenge, but gives you his league card to commemorate your meeting and wishes you well. And there we are, off you go to Stow Side. Okay, on the next route there's a scene with Team Yell that just makes no sense. Like, it's dumb, and it's clearly supposed to be dumb, and that's fine, I'd like it to be dumb, but it's so nonsensical that it's not even funny, and whatever joke they're going for doesn't land. Basically, they're observing a Silicobra that's dozing off and that they think is very cute, and they're not letting anyone pass who they think will wake it up. An old lady comes up, asks if they'll let her pass if he promises to go quietly, and they politely oblige. Then, you and Hop arrive and they refuse to let you go through because you're too loud, even though you've literally just got there, and because apparently your challenger band is gonna make your stomping around too loud. Or it's just them poorly disguising that they want to take out any potential competition to Marnie. This scene is very insignificant, but I want to fix it. This joke, whatever they're going for here, would work way better if they can see that the Silicobra is tired and wants to get some sleep, and because they're Team Yell and they're dumb and their whole thing is that they cheer for everything, they're actively following the Silicobra around, cheering at it to get some sleep. Not realising, because they're dumb, that they're the reason it can't get to sleep. Sure enough, you and Hop show up, try to explain the flaw in their logic, they're not having it, a battle ensues. The scene just lands way better this way. Yes, I am a comedy writer. youtube.com/paletteswapmag. Anyway, basically everything from here until after the gym insta one side remains the same, including the battle with Hop. Fine, we have cut 2 of them out so far to be fair, so sure. Now, after the gym is the scene where Bede destroys the mural. This also stays largely the same, however, I want Rose to come off a bit angrier and a bit meaner in this scene, almost surprisingly, unreasonably angry at Bede for what he's done, specifically mentioning that he's incredibly relieved the mural is still intact. That's important. Now, from this point on, if people haven't already figured it out, it's probably very obvious that Chairman Rose is going to be the villain. That's fine. He doesn't need to be a twist villain. Hell, most people had him pegged as the villain the first day his art was shown off on social media. I specifically remember this day. His pseudo-twist villain nature is part of what makes him so bad, because his turn just comes completely out of nowhere. I don't care to surprise you with this. It doesn't matter, as long as the character of Rose remains logically consistent and interesting to follow. So everyone leaves, and sure enough, despite what Rose said, the mural is not intact. It all falls apart and reveals the statue of Zacian and Zamazenta behind it. In the original games, this is where Sonia starts to put together the game's central mystery, if you could even call it that. But crucially, in this version, she hasn't yet seen what's inside the Hammerlock vault, so she can't put the pieces together yet. All she's seen is the statue of a single human with a sword and a shield, and then a pair of dogs with the sword and shield behind a mural. So it'd be a hell of a leap in logic for her to be like, oh, these must be the actual legendary heroes. Instead, she's just kind of confused as to what it means, and why Rose was so concerned about the idea of the mural falling apart specifically. She gives you an interesting tidbit though. This mural is rumoured to have been painted a few hundred years ago by yet another descendant of the legendary hero. With that, she has a lot to ponder, so she points you towards Balonlia, and off you go. The whole section with Balonlia and the 5th gym also stays the same. I like this bit of the game. I would like it if Glimwood Tangle were bigger and a lot more open, and if there was more to do and see in Balonlia, because goddamn, look at this place, it looks fantastic, but hey, we'll just have to imagine. Originally, after beating Opal, you go back to Hammerlock with her, she practically adopts Bede, which I've established I'm fine with, and then when you go to leave Hammerlock to the west, you bump into Sonia again. She says some generic stuff about how she's going to keep looking into the myths, and then she's cut off by an explosion coming from the energy plant, and says she's detecting a power spot that's popped up in Hammerlock. Then Leon shows up and the pair agree to go check out what it was. In our version, there is no explosion, so this scene doesn't need to happen. Forget everything you just heard. Yay for less moments where Leon just runs off screen and does the actual plot stuff. Yay for less interruptions. We're also cutting the encounter and battle with Hop here, but this is the last one we'll get rid of. I am cognizant of the player falling behind in levels now, but I mean the experience share is so insane in this game, and you've got the whole wild area to explore. I'm sure you'll be fine. A lot of the battles getting cut here will be evened out by some stuff we're adding in its place towards the end. Now you'll be able to go all the way to Sirchester and get your 6th gym badge without being yapped at unnecessarily. Happy days. I know the story and changes have slowed down a lot here, and I think this is good. Even with the minor intrusions, this stretch was probably my favourite part of the game apart from Winden, because I liked feeling free, like I was on my own adventure. Again, it's nice when the game goes hands off for a bit, I think. Anyway, after you've beaten the 6th gym, some more stuff's going to go down. Originally, there is this really bad scene where Sonia shows up and takes you and Hop to a restaurant where there's just like a bit of ancient tapestry hanging up on the wall. Like, I know you could make the argument that this is a part of the place's history and they're just preserving it, but like, look at this place. It's called Bob's Your Uncle, and no one says anything about it, and I kind of just think it's dumb. Even more than that, the tapestry isn't even really interesting, and what Sonia finds out from it doesn't even end up being that consequential. In our version, we're going to do this scene differently. The battle you have with Hop in Sirchester, which originally comes after the restaurant scene, now comes first. Hop practically ambushes you when you leave the gym and challenges you to a battle, which you win, of course. Then Sonia shows up and wonders if you realise what you're standing near. She explains the lore of the hero's bath, where the supposed hero in this version, and not heroes like the original, came to heal their wounds after the Battle of the Darkest Day. In the original, this doesn't really go anywhere, but it's a nice little touch, I guess. In our version, I want Sonia to remark on how Pokemon have always been naturally drawn to this bath though. In fact, they seem to like it more than humans do. Hop notices the markings on the wall that depict dogs and wonders what they mean. Sonia, having only just noticed them, is struck by them and seems deep in thought when, of all people, Swordwood and Shielbert show up. They interject, having overheard Hop's musings, and inform you that the original mayor of Sirchester, when the city was established, had a canine Pokemon that he loved very much. It was a Boltund or an Arcanine or something of the like. They say that the markings on the wall are a tribute to that Pokemon. Sonia remarks that that's interesting. She's never heard that story before. A crowd begins forming nearby as people start hounding Swordwood and Shielbert, and they say they'll have to be off soon. They say that you've just beaten the Sirchester gym, so surely you'll be off to Spikemouth next. It's regrettable that you even have to go to Spikemouth at all, given the state it's been in lately. They warn you to watch your back around there. There's some unsavoury types who love nothing more than to tell lies and say rude things. They're off, and now you're free to traverse Route 9 and make it to Spikemouth. And this is where some of the bigger stuff's going to start to go down again. Instead of Marnie just calling you over to let you know the way in, the player actually spots her watching them in their periphery and chases after her. When they get cornered, she remarks that they're perceptive. The gym leader, Piers, asked her to keep watch and make sure no corporate stooges can come in to challenge the gym. Are you a corporate stooge? She's honestly not sure, but since you've spotted her, she has no choice but to try and beat you back. So, your second battle with Marnie commences. Yes, it's been a long time since the first, but you'll battle her again in the Championship Cup, and 3 battles for one of your 3 rivals is perfectly reasonable, I think. After you beat her, she acquiesces and says she'll let you in for the sake of being a good sport, but be warned, Piers and the trainers inside might not take too kindly to some of the company you keep. Now, yet again, I would love to be like, hey, let's actually do something with the 7th gym so that it isn't literally running down a series of straight lines and doing battles, but this is rewriting Pokemon Sword and Shield, not improving Pokemon Sword and Shield's gameplay experience, so here's how the Spikemouth gym actually changes. In the original, the gym trainers are just a bunch of Team Yell grunts who don't really say anything of substance, and they're just kind of there to be gags, and that's fine. It's fun, even. I especially like the guys who just jump out the fucking window. That's awesome. But in this version, we can't be having them just say whatever, because we've got some lore to dump. Throughout the gym, the Team Yell members chastise you for being all buddy-buddy with Chairman Rose, making vague reference to what he did to this city, calling you stuff like a stooge and a chairman's pet, no better than that champion. When you finally make it to Piers, he lays it out for you. Some years ago, before the construction of Wyndon, Spikemouth was the home of the Championship Cup finals. It used to be a much bigger city. The area outside on Route 9, now known as the Spikemouth outskirts, well, that used to be Spikemouth too. But when Rose drew up the plans for Wyndon, he demanded the Championship Cup finals be moved to Wyndon instead, even ordering that the stadium here be torn down and getting the power spot removed and moved over to Wyndon, which Piers says took huge amounts of manpower and weird equipment. Where you're standing right now, face to face with Piers, is where the centre of the stadium used to be. And in order to justify the moving of the stadium from Spikemouth to Wyndon, Rose pulled out every trick in the book. He said that the city wasn't big enough to host the kinds of battles Galar deserves, even though it was doing just fine for years. He made up some fake stats about how it'd be cheaper to spend a weekend in Wyndon than it ever was to spend a weekend in Spikemouth, but it's way more expensive in Wyndon now than it ever was here, and no one's ever challenged him on that. Piers even alleges that Macrocosmos employees would sneak around the city at night, tampering with electronics and infrastructure to make the city seem less safe. And eventually, with all this stuff combined, the plan for the Wyndon project was approved, and this ruined Spikemouth. Shops shut down, buildings closed, people moved out. And they weren't even necessarily moving to Wyndon yet because it wasn't finished. They were just going anywhere else to get away from all the noise of the stadium being demolished. In just a few short years, Piers explains, Rose drained Spikemouth of everything it had for his own ambitions. Even the houses that people used to live in out in what we now call the outskirts were bulldozed, and that part of the city wasn't even considered Spikemouth anymore. So Team Yell, Marnie, Piers, they're all each other have got anymore. That's why they started Team Yell, to cheer Marnie on so she can win the league and stick it to Rose. but if she can't win the league, then him stopping Rose's golden child from doing so here and now will be good enough for him. The battle commences. After you beat Piers, he's not exactly inclined to like you, but he is forced to accept your strength. He reluctantly gives you the badge and implores you to think carefully about everything he's told you, and question whether Rose's approval is really worth it. Obviously, he says this all in a much punkier way than I'm talking here, but this is the gist of what he's saying. When you leave, Marnie's outside. She sees you beat her brother. It really does seem like you might go far in this league with only Raihan left. She wonders aloud what you'd be like as champion, if you'd stand up to the suits who just say and do whatever they want. Whatever the case, she's hoping to never have to find out, because she still wants to be the champion, and she still has a shot. She departs, and you're on your own again. No dumb scene with Leon and another explosion and Hop and seeing Leon having done more plot stuff on your phone. It's just straight back to Hammerlock for your 8th gym badge. Back in Hammerlock, you bump into Sonia as well as Professor Magnolia again for the first time in ages. Originally, there's this whole messy scene about red lights flashing in the sky and Pokemon Dynamaxing all over the place, even though you never see anything, and Leon's there and it's just all over the place. We're going to keep it a bit simpler here. Professor Magnolia is simply here to check up on how you've been doing and how your Pokedex is progressing, and she's impressed with everything you've done so far. It's just nice to get a reminder that she exists, I think. Sonia says she's also here because they were hoping to see if the Hammerlock Vault had been reopened yet so they could check it out, but alas, it's still closed. Magnolia says it's still nice to see Hammerlock again as it's been a while. This, she says, is where she studied to be a professor. Hammerlock has always been Galar's most revered city for education and the arts, though it looks like Wyndon might take that title in a few years' time. Either way, it was nice to get out again, but she's got to be going, so she departs. Sonia still can't really get her head around why construction in the lower levels of the Hammerlock Stadium necessitates the closing of the vault, which is a separate building. She says people around the city have told her that it's because the power lines are connected, but the vault is an old building, much older than the stadium, and so she's not sure how that could be possible. Regardless, she's excited to see you face Raihan and wonders if you might be okay with her watching the battle. Of course, you oblige and she goes off to the stadium to meet you there. When you head over there, not only is Sonia in the lobby, but so is Raihan. Raihan excitedly informs you that he has a scout hanging around the gate to Spikemouth who reports back to him when anyone beats Piers, so he knows who to expect. So we can reasonably assume that one of the people we saw outside the gate earlier was actually one of Raihan's gym trainers in disguise. Raihan says he was ecstatic to hear that the latest person was you, especially given that you've got Leon's endorsement and all that. So for this battle, Raihan says, he wants to use some Pokemon he hasn't used in a very long time. There's one problem. He left their balls down in the old stadium storage, which is now being converted into the energy plant. He's wondering if he can ask one of the nearby construction workers to give him a key so we can get... He suddenly pauses. The camera pans over and we see a sparkling object in the corner of the lobby. Raihan asks if you can go and pick it up, hoping that it's what he thinks it is. Sure enough, it's the lift key. Someone must have dropped it on the way to their lunch break. He's going to go down and get his team now, and invites you and Sonia to come along and see the energy plant if you want. Sonia, of course, would love to, and you go with them. So this is actually where you see the energy plant for the first time now. Raihan goes and gets his old team from a storage unit in the initial hallway that leads into the main room, whilst Sonia goes on ahead and gets a good look at it. Sonia remarks that it certainly all looks very impressive, though she can't help but notice that none of the machinery is actually on, or doing anything. Raihan says it's not his area of expertise, so he wouldn't know. Sonia asks how long construction's been ongoing again. Raihan says it's been about 5 months now. Sonia's surprised to hear this. You'd think they'd have made more progress on such a small energy plant in 5 months, that at least some of the machinery would be up and running. Furthermore, why isn't there anyone else in here, you know, working? Raihan says, come to think of it, he doesn't know. He's only been down here a couple times, and while he's pretty sure he's not really supposed to be, no one's ever been here to stop him. A stern voice cuts through the room. Let me be the first, then. It's Oleana. She lectures gym leader Raihan that he should know better than to wander onto an active construction site, and as for you two, you're outright trespassing. She harshly orders you all to leave now, and somewhat taken aback and all a little nervous, you agree. Back in the lobby, Raihan apologises for getting you into trouble and talks up what a scary lady that Oleana can be. But he's gotten what he wanted, and he's tired of even having to think about all the extra people cluttering around in his gym. All he wants to think about now is battle, and so with that, he'll see you inside. Sonya wishes you luck, but also can't help but ponder that there's something strange going on. So in the original Sword and Shield, Raihan's gym challenge obviously initially takes place inside the Hammerlock Vault, but we can't get there yet. Thing is, there's like practically nothing to it. The only thing that sets it apart from being any other 3 gym battles in a row is that it's in the vault, so we can just move those battles to inside the stadium. Finally, you battle Raihan for the final gym badge, and presumably you win. If you don't see the rest of this. That's how games work. Quick side note, we're going to take the Gigantamax Duraludon off of Raihan's team and replace it with another G-Max Pokemon for his ace, because we're giving the G-Max Duraludon to someone else. You can probably guess who. One of the underrated ways Pokemon can convey narrative is through team building. The Pokemon characters use can and should far more often say something about the character. It's a bit like decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or something. It'd be weird if Yugi just started using a zombie deck randomly from one episode onwards, because it would feel at conflict with his character. The characters use cards and decks that say something about the character. Joey is a bit superstitious and believes in lucky charms and leaving things up to chance, so he uses cards with themes of gambling and randomness in his deck. It's much the same in Pokemon. As I touched on earlier with Oleana and her G-Max Garbodor, this is clearly saying something about the character. G-Max Duraludon to this end would be much better served on someone else's team, as it makes for a better reflection of their character. Afterwards, it's not just Sonya who's waiting in the lobby for you, but Leon, who says he got there just in time to see the end of that battle. He's super impressed that you beat his fiercest rival, but somehow not surprised at all. That means you're surely good enough to rival him now, but are you good enough to beat him? He can't wait to find out when he sees you in Wyndon Stadium for the championships. He informs you that you can now take the train there from Hammerlock Station, though you'll need to pass through Victory Road first. It's tough, he says, but he has no doubt you'll get through. And with that, he looks forward to seeing you on the other side and says bye for now. Sonya approaches you. Before you set off to Wyndon, there's something she wants to do. Later tonight, if you're up for it, she wants to sneak into the Hammerlock Vault. Nothing about what she saw at the energy plant adds up, and she just wants to know if there's something more going on here. If you agree, she'll meet you outside the vault, and whenever you go and do so, we'll skip time forward a bit so that it becomes nighttime. You begin sneaking in and are blocked by a Macrocosmos employee or a member of League staff or what have you on 2 separate occasions. Very minor battles, but 2 new trainer battles on the critical path to help make up for some of the ones we've cut. Then you're in the vault, and this is where Sonya sees the tapestry depicting the 2 heroes fending off the darkest day. Except there's a small change. The heroes are depicted with pointy ears and long bushy tails. No, it's not someone's Tumblr blog. This is what tapestries and manuscripts are like sometimes. It's not uncommon for characters in fables and mythical heroes to be depicted with animalian characteristics, or even straight up as animals, as a way of characterizing them as larger than life, something beyond human. I think it makes sense for whoever created this tapestry to depict Zacian and Zamazenta as human-like, even if they weren't, given that who made it was human, and what the pair did was a messianic act of bravery for Pokemon and humans. It's like a way of accepting them, effectively saying, you are one of us, or 2 of us. This also makes Sonya's deduction a bit more impressive. She's not just seeing stuff that's telling her everything and barely putting the pieces together still. She has some legwork to do here. So we're going to take the eureka moment she has after the mural collapses at Stow-on-Side and put it here. Only she still hasn't figured it all out yet. This tapestry is still a little too vague. She posits that based on this and the mural, that the legendary hero of Galar was in fact 2 people. And weirder than that, that's twice now they seem to have been depicted as dogs. She recalls that Hop mentioned the Pokemon you ran into in the Slumbering World at the start of the game was like a dog, right? The player nods in the affirmative. This is all very interesting. Clearly, there might be more to Galar's history than meets the eye. She suggests you get out of here for now, and when you're back out on the streets of Hammerlock, she tells you that she's going to do all the digging she can on these dogs in the Slumbering World. There's a library in Sirchester that might be of some help. In the meantime, she says, you've got a championship to win. So off to Wyndon with you, and best of luck. When you're ready, you take the train to Wyndon from Hammerlock Station and you're out in our drizzly, much more fitting Victory Road. Often there's a boss at the end of Victory Road, usually your rival. In this case, it's Oleana who's waiting for you, blocking the entrance to Wyndon. She informs you that due to your trespassing in the energy plant and Macrocosmos employees reporting your trespassing in the Hammerlock Vault, you will not be allowed into Wyndon, nor to compete in the Championship Cup. A battle ensues, you defeat Oleana and move into Wyndon anyway, where you find Rose and Leon talking at the entrance. Rose, obviously having recently ordered Oleana to keep you out, is surprised to see you, but has to act like he isn't. Pressed on Oleana's actions just moments ago, Rose insists she must have acted on her own. He apologises to you and promises to discipline her. Quickly changing the subject, he welcomes you to Wyndon, his beautiful magnum opus. He says he came from nothing but a humble mining family, and Wyndon is his gift back to Galar for letting a man like him be as successful as he is. He wishes you good luck in the championships and can't wait to watch you in action. Leon's still there too. He gives you some of the same general platitudes and tells you to head over to the stadium when you're ready. The tournament progresses more or less the same until after you beat Hop in the semi-finals. Here, the whole scene with Leon promising to meet you for dinner and getting held up in Rose Tower doesn't happen. Instead, you go back for dinner with Hop and are met by Sonia. She explains everything she's found out about Zacian and Zamazenta from a library in Sirchester, but she describes a weird experience she had in the library. She says that most of the books she flicked through that even so much as mentioned Zacian and Zamazenta had pages missing or words scribbled out. From what she could make out, there is indeed a theory that suggests the Darkest Day was in fact stopped by a pair of dog-like Pokemon, but almost all traces of this theory is being hidden for some reason. She wonders if the dog-like Pokemon are the ones you and Hop encountered in the slumbering world at the start of your journey. Hop is shocked to hear this and wonders what Swordwood and Shieldbert know about it. Either way, Sonia doesn't want to clog your head up with a bunch of thoughts ahead of the Championship Cup finals the next day, so she wants to let you rest. She just thinks there's something weird going on. The next day, you beat Bede as you do in the original Sword and Shield, and then out comes Nessa. And this, right here, is a scripted battle. Throughout this battle, the Dynamax prompt on the UI is greyed out. If you try and click it, an on-screen message will tell you that for some reason, your Dynamax band isn't working. When you get Nessa down to her last Pokemon, her Dreadnought, finally the prompt to Dynamax starts working again. Naturally, you go to Dynamax as she Gigantamaxes her Dreadnought. In this one instance, the opponent's Dynamax animation plays first. She successfully Gigantamaxes her Dreadnought, then you go to Dynamax, the animation seems to play out as normal, but then, as you throw the giant Pokeball, it shrinks back down to regular size in mid-air, and you just send the same Pokemon back out at regular size. Nessa seems a little taken aback by this, but as far as she's aware, you just made some kind of genuine mistake with your Dynamax, and she's not about to let an opportunity like that go in the Championship Finals, so she attacks, and regardless of what Pokemon you have, she knocks it out. If you have another Pokemon to send out, the only option you have is to try and Dynamax, where the same thing happens again. However many Pokemon you have left, you can do whatever you want, but Nessa's G-Max Dreadnought is unbeatable. If you get it down to 1 HP, you can't do any more damage to it. After all this, you lose to Nessa. This battle is a forced loss. You are out of the Championship Cup. We cut to reactions from the likes of Hop and Sonia and Marnie in the crowd, who are all in disbelief. We see Leon watching on, who's genuinely disappointed. Even Nessa's a little surprised at your repeat mistakes, as we fade to black. We open back up in your house in Postwick. Hop comes in and has a conversation with your mum, who mentions that she thinks you still need cheering up. Hop tries to console you, but does also remind you that it's been a week since the Championship Cup finals. He talks about how awesome Leon's battle with Raihan in the finals was, and how proud he is that Leon defended the title once again. He realises pretty quickly that he's not helping. Just then, a knock at the door. Your mum, who's tied up with something, asks if you can get it. You go outside, and there's no one standing outside the door. But at the very bottom of Postwick, you can see Oleana standing there, waiting for you. And at this point, the music stops. There's no sound but the chirping of birds, Or, if it's night, crickets. Because when a game goes silent right before a big dramatic reveal, that's good game design. You go down to see her, and she politely, yet somewhat awkwardly, asks if she can speak with you in private. You go somewhere else quiet, but nearby. Oleana says that she was fired by Rose after failing to stop you from entering Winden. She's lost her job, she's been blacklisted by the League, and her life has been utterly derailed. When she first met Rose, she was just a down-on-her-luck admin working for the League, but Rose came along shortly before construction started on Winden and whisked her away, offering her the job of his personal assistant. He promised her the world, that she'd never want for anything again. And for a while, especially after the city was built, that was true. She's not sure why Rose picked her out specifically. Maybe she seemed particularly impressionable or manipulable, but he only asked her for one thing in return for all of this. Silence. Because when Rose was building Winden, he did something very strange. He built power lines underneath the stadium that travel all the way to Rose Tower. Oleana saw your loss to Nessa at the Championship Cup Finals, and she wants to tell you this. The reason you couldn't Dynamax is because Rose didn't want you to. He has something at the top of Rose Tower that's been allowing him to control who can and can't Dynamax in Winden Stadium ever since only shortly after the city was built. She doesn't even know why she's telling you this. Perhaps she's gone a bit mad. For so long, she nodded along with Rose's plans, even though she knew he was a bad man, because her life as his assistant was beautiful. She was surrounded by elegance and luxury at every turn, but the whole time, deep down, and this quote is important, she felt like trash. And the moment Rose needed to save his own skin, he threw her out, cast her aside like it was nothing. Even if either of you tried to report this to the press or the League, she laments, nobody would believe you. You'd just look like a disgruntled former employee and a jilted loser. Even if they tried to look into the power lines or the tower, he'd have a plan to cover it up before they even looked. But there's the truth of the matter. Maybe, she ponders, you could go to the tower and confront him if you wanted. But the place is crawling with Macrocosmos cronies who are all in on it. There's no way you'd get to the top without some backup, and she can hardly think of anyone in Galar who hates Rose as much as you two do. Whatever you do now, she says, she doesn't really care. She's got to get back on the job hunt now, just to make ends meet. She bids you farewell. You go back into the player's house to explain things to your mum and Hop, and they kinda don't believe you. It all sounds a little far-fetched, and they think Oleana might just be filling your head with conspiracy theories. They try and be nice and let you down gently, but it does seem that you've just taken this loss really hard. Hop tells you that he knows you have reason to be suspicious of Rose, but that Oleana was never trustworthy either, and she has all the reason to spread lies about him right now. He's sorry about what happened at the championships, but even if there was something more going on, he can't just go and storm Rose Tower with you off the back of this without some kind of solid evidence, especially given that his brother's the champion. Who knows what kind of ramifications this could have for Leon if you barge all the way up there and this turns out to not be true. Now, I know some people might suggest that this makes Hop a bad friend or whatever, but I actually think he's perfectly logical here. He's certainly being a lot more logical than he is when he goes to make a ruckus at Rose Tower with you and Team Yell just because Leon's late for dinner. Realistically, there would and should be some consequences if he, the champion's brother, goes and fights all the way up to the top of the League chairman's office based on something he just heard one day. Yes, he has reason to be suspicious of Rose, but it's not strong enough evidence. Hop is allowed to be rash and impulsive at times, but this is a bit too far, and he's thinking of his brother as well. So no, Hop will not be going to Rose Tower with you right now. And this also works out a lot better for the way we want his character arc to resolve too. Your mum suggests that maybe you should just go get some shut-eye and see if you've calmed down when you wake up. So you go and do that, and the next day, the game opens up again. You can actually go to all the major cities in Galar right now, and in the lobby of every gym, the gym leader is there, and you can talk to them and explain what you've learned, and each of them kinda let you down gently. They're all like, hey, that's crazy. Why don't you get a bite to eat, or maybe go for a walk or something. Raihan will remark that he doesn't like Rose and he remembers that he found the energy plant weird, but tensions are high right now and it's his responsibility as a gym leader not to act rashly. Nessa will actually get pretty annoyed at the suggestion. She's like, hey, look, I know it sucks to make a mistake like that, but you just gotta suck it up and take the L, okay? All of these gym leaders will behave more or less like this, except one. The one who resides in your actual destination, Spikemouth. When you go to Spikemouth, you'll find Piers and Marnie hanging around with Team Yell, and of course, given everything that you've learned about Spikemouth from your time at the 7th Gym, they are absolutely inclined to believe you that Rose has been doing some shady stuff. Piers will specifically recall overhearing some Macrocosmos workers talking about how they'll need to start with the power lines at Wyndon Stadium whilst they were tearing down the old League Stadium in Spikemouth. And even if they're not all that convinced, Team Yell have been looking for a reason to cause trouble for Rose ever since he got funding pulled out of their city, and this is the best excuse they've ever had, so they're absolutely along for the ride. You head off to Rose Tower with the cavalry in tow, and this section at first plays out more or less like how it does in the original Sword and Shield, what with League staff trying to block you off at the train station and whatnot. I also like not having Hop here because he's been with you so much throughout the game, and this helps keep more of a spotlight on Team Yell specifically. They are the only people willing to back you up on this, whereas Hop being there too kinda made them fade into the background a bit. It was always a pretty fun subversion that the people we thought were going to be the evil team actually wound up teaming up with us against the real bad guys, but the fact that Hop isn't here and they're our only allies makes it feel more significant, more intentional, and not just like a fun thing that happens to be going on in the background. I'd love to say that we could expand Rose Tower and make it a whole late game dungeon like Silphco or Mount Coronet, but I've already stretched how much gameplay stuff I can change on the same development timeline, what with the Victory Road change and the slight route redesigns and a lot of these new late game cutscenes and segments, so I think this has to stay the same. You go through a gauntlet of 3 double battles against Macrocosmos employees, only with Marnie as your partner this time instead of Hop. She's pleasantly surprised to see that you didn't turn out to be another one of Chairman Rose's pets, and that you're actually willing to take the fight to the corporate suits. It's not much of a character arc, but at the very least you get to change her opinion of you over the course of the game, which is more than you can say in the originals, and she gets to enact a measure of revenge on the man responsible for the degradation of her home. Finally, you make it to the top floor of Rose Tower, where Chairman Rose awaits you. But whatever this room is, it's clearly not an office, and it's not just Rose in the room. Floating weakly above the ground in the centre of the room, as if panting, hooked up to a bunch of tubes and funnels, is Eternatus. At either end of the room, a rusted sword and rusted shield rest on pedestals, with 2 of the biggest tubes attached to Eternatus connected to them. Piers and the rest of Team Yell are held up some floors below fighting off the rest of Macrocosmos, so Marnie, the only one with you, asks Rose what the heck that thing is. Rose explains that this is Eternatus, though most in Galar know it as the Darkest Day. Thousands of years ago, this Pokemon landed in Galar on a meteorite and lay dormant for some time. When it finally woke up, the mere energy it radiated caused Pokemon to Dynamax all over the region. It nearly destroyed Galar. Then it went dormant again for a very long time. It reverted into an egg, and this egg only hatched again for the first time in centuries a few years ago, not long after construction on Wyndon finished. If this is all true, Marnie asks, why do you have it? A third voice cuts through the room. That would be thanks to us. Who should step out of the shadows but Swordwood and Shieldbert? Swordwood and Shieldbert explain that as the descendants of the hero who stopped Eternatus, their family line has long tracked the movements of the creature, even when it was just an egg. The egg had been in the possession of the Galarian government for a long time, but when the Wyndon construction project began, they approached Chairman Rose with a plan. Eternatus, when awake, of course, causes Pokemon to Dynamax, but it can, in fact, control that power. Should it will it, it can engorge certain Pokemon with more Dynamax energy, making them even more powerful than regular Dynamax Pokemon. It can also strip that power away and deny Pokemon the ability to Dynamax entirely, regardless of wishing stars or power spots. Eternatus's power overrides all. With that power at its disposal, Chairman Rose would be able to dictate the outcome of all the Championship Cup matches at Wyndon Stadium, should the egg hatch. And, Chairman Rose interjects, the egg did hatch, a few months after the city was finished, so he was very glad he took Swordwood and Shielbert up on their offer. They would give up the location of the egg and help him steal it in exchange for a favour in return. Marnie asks what that favour could possibly be. Swordwood and Shielbert seem to consider answering for a moment, but then decide that they've said enough. No more explanation is necessary, because you won't be leaving this place. You'll be thrown in the tower basement until they figure out what to do with you. A battle begins. If you're playing Sword, of course you face Swordwood whilst Marnie faces Shielbert, and vice versa. You and Marnie both win your battles and Chairman Rose is irked. This is becoming quite a situation, and it looks like he'll have to intervene. The player character gestures. They're questioning Rose on something. Oh? He perks up. You're wondering why I used Eternatus to sabotage your league match? Well, he begins. But he's cut off by a familiar voice. Because you were getting too close to the truth. It's Sonia, who arrives with Hop halfway up the stairs just behind you. Hop explains that he gave what you told him yesterday some more thought and came over to your house to discuss it further with you, but found that you were gone, and your mum explained to him that you'd been gone all day. He figured he knew where you were and rushed over here as fast as he could. On the way, he was waved down by Sonia, who had just finished up some more research, piecing together a bunch of information from censored books from the Sirchester Library. Having come to some shocking conclusions, Sonia requested to come with, and when they saw the Team Yell members at the base of the tower, they knew you were here. Piers and the other members who have more or less dealt with Macrocosmos now let them through. As Hop and Sonia come all the way up and enter the room proper, Hop gawks at Eternatus in the middle of the room and wonders aloud what it is. Sonia remarks that it's Eternatus, as she suspected, the Pokemon responsible for the darkest day. Hop is obviously shocked. Rose is impressed that she's figured this out and asks her to elaborate on the supposed truth the player was getting too close to which Sonia, pointing at Swordwood and Shielbert, exclaims, "The truth that these two are liars." She goes on to explain that the hero who saved Galar from the darkest day wasn't one person. In fact, it wasn't a person at all. It was Zacian and Zamazenta. Swordwood and Shielbert chuckle. Perhaps it's true. But these little white lies haven't hurt anyone, and they've certainly been a lot of help for their reputations and their wallets. Sonia speculates that Swordwood and Shielbert must have helped Rose procure Eternatus's egg in exchange for Rose's help in covering up the true history of Galar, which is that Zacian and Zamazenta are the heroes, and Swordwood and Shielbert's claim of heroic lineage is a sham. Sonia then challenges Rose on the energy plant in Hammerlock. They're not actually doing anything down there, are they? The machinery's not even turned on. Correct, says Rose. And it was all just a convenient excuse to cordon off the Hammerlock Vault so that people would stop looking at the tapestry there. Correct, says Rose. Another quick aside, I know some people might question how more people wouldn't know that Zacian and Zamazenta were the heroes when the vault in Hammerlock depicting two dogs saving the day has been there for who knows how long. To that I'd say, that's all it shows. And without seeing the statue behind the mural of the two dogs and Stow on Side, which you and Sonia are the only characters we know have seen, it'd be basically impossible to put the pieces together and figure out that that's depicting any real history. I think to a lot of people it'd just look like cool art or some kind of myth or legend and not the real story, especially when we now know that there's been a lot of tampering with Galar's history going on elsewhere, I think you can reasonably assume that not a lot of people could have figured this out. And then, Sonia continues, I had the strangest conversation with the librarian in Sirchester. She says that Macrocosmos employees are a total nightmare to deal with. They have no respect for the books. They come in and they just scribble all over them and tear out pages like they own them. Rose smirks. They are certainly scrupulous note-takers. Sonia retorts, takers being the operative word here. Rose is amused and assures you this is all very impressive, giving particular credit to Sonia, but unfortunately, he can't allow it to go any further. They're going to have to make room in the tower basement for 4 now. It's here when Hop interjects. He says that Sonia explained to him how Rose might be using Eternatus' Dynamax energy for his own whims, and whatever's about to happen, he's going to make sure Rose can never interfere in someone's league match like he did to you again. He runs over to the sword or shield that Eternatus' tubes are connected to, whichever one is opposite to the version of the game you're playing, and beckons you over to the other one, vowing to shut down this machinery as the pair of you both start pulling the sword and shield out of their respective pedestals. Rose and Sonia both shout for you to stop, but it's too late. All it took was for you to jerk the sword and shield slightly out of their pedestals to quickly realise that they weren't powering the machinery, they were restraining Eternatus' power. Swordwood and Shieldbert cry out that those are the relics their ancestor scavenged from the battlefield in the aftermath of the Darkest Day thousands of years ago, the weapons used to defeat Eternatus. Rose admonishes you for being fools as Eternatus roars back to life, the red lights thrumming with power all over its body once again. Rose explains that the rusted sword and shield were the only things keeping Eternatus' power in check. Hop asks if you can just plug them back in, and Rose shouts that it's not as simple as that. It takes hours of complicated configurations to channel their effect whenever they're first plugged into the machinery. Eternatus flies straight through the ceiling and begins absorbing the horde of wishing stars Rose had in the room, sucking them up like a saucer with a tractor beam. And with that, Eternatus' body is complete once again, and it Eternamaxes. The sky turns black and the winds howl as Swordwood and Shieldbert flee, with Rose reluctantly following shortly after. Piers passes them with some Team Yell members on the way up and wonders what the heck's going on. Marnie says there's no time to explain. Whatever this thing is, they need to stop it, and a raid battle with you, Hop, Marnie and Piers begins. This will play out much like the original battle with Eternamax Eternatus in Sword and Shield, only instead of your moves just not working full stop, they will work, but Eternatus will just be too powerful to beat, or do much damage to at all. Once everyone's first Pokemon are knocked out, which they will be, Marnie will exclaim that this is hopeless, and Sonia will interject. She tells you that Swordwood and Shieldbert said it themselves. Their ancestor just stole the rusted sword and shield from the aftermath of the Darkest Day. They aren't the real hero, and never were. The only way to defeat Eternatus is to take the rusted sword and shield back to their original wielders. She says that everything suggests that was Zacian and Zamazenta, who are back at the slumbering world. Hop feels like this is all his fault and laments his impulsiveness. He remarks that the two of you have to make this right. Piers adds that you have to be quick. They all only have so many Pokemon to distract this thing with. Hop nods. He brings out his Corviknight and instructs you to get on your fastest flying Pokemon and says you've got to get back to the slumbering world ASAP. Team Yell wish you luck and cheer you on as they get ready to throw every Pokemon they have at Eternatus, and you and Hop take flight. So in this section, we're going to take some of the big raid battles out of the post-game and put them here. I would love to be like, and then there's some cutscenes and some animations where you see Dynamax Pokemon popping up all over the region because of Eternatus' power, but again, I've already stretched what I can feasibly add under the same development timeline, and this isn't really reasonable. My philosophy is that if we can't add ways for the player to actually see the effects of Eternatus' power, the best we can do is show them and move them around. Yes, this does mean that Sword and Shield's already paltry post-game is now even smaller, but no one even likes that post-game gauntlet of non-stop raid battles anyway, and if it's for the sake of making the main story and climax both better and a decent bit longer, I think it's worth it. In the post-game, I think you do 6 raid battles. We're going to move 3 of them here. Whilst flying back towards Postwick with Hop, he first sees Leon and Raihan below trying to hold off a Dynamax Pokemon in Hammerlock Stadium and has to intervene, and naturally you follow. You team up with Leon and Raihan to take on this Dynamaxed Haxorus whilst Hop explains the situation. After the battle, Raihan stays behind to protect Hammerlock, but Leon flies off towards the tower to help keep Eternatus at bay. You do this 2 more times, maybe not necessarily because Hop sees a trainer he has to go and help, but because the Dynamax Pokemon is blocking your way or trying to attack you, just to keep things a little fresh. Either way, you land in Turffield Stadium to help Milo and one of his gym trainers fend off the Dynamax Pokemon there, and you also land in Motorstoke Stadium to help Kabu and one of his gym trainers fend off the Pokemon there. Finally, you land back in Postwick just outside the Slumbering World, you and Hop with the rusted sword and shield in tow, the sky a harsh black and red in the distance. Postwick is one of the few areas far enough away to be relatively untouched by Eternatus' energy. For now. You go in, we skip the whole illusion projected by the box legendary that happens in the original here, and you just go through all of the Slumbering World like a regular dungeon for the first time until you finally reach the altar. Hop is unsure of what to do, but notices a broken down tablet that seems to depict someone kneeling, offering a sword to a large dog, or a shield depending on the version. You both take the hint, get down on one knee, and hold out the sword and shield respectively. This is when the foggy, misty grey of the Slumbering World washes away, and almost in an instant, the place takes on the vibrant amber colours it has in the post-game. The pair of you look up, and before you stand Zacian and Zamazenta, studying you, assessing you. For the first time in eons, humans are offering to return the weapons they originally used to defeat Eternatus. More so, they look up and notice the black and red clouds swirling in the distance. They know what's going on. They accept the weapons, take on their crowned forms, and then practically abduct you, snatching you up onto their backs and dashing off. Much like how they kind of teleport to the roof of Hammerlock Stadium in the originals, they pretty much warp with you on their backs over to Rose Tower, where they know Eternatus is. You arrive on the same floor you were before with Marnie, Piers and the rest of Team Yell all downed, having lost all their Pokemon and feeling overwhelmed by Eternatus' energy. The only ones standing are Leon, who looks exhausted, and Sonia, who's nervously cheering him on. Sonia is obviously ecstatic to see you arrive with Zacian and Zamazenta in tow. Leon is obviously also very glad to see you guys. Hop tells him to stand aside and that you'll handle things from here. A double battle now ensues with you and Hop using Zacian and Zamazenta respectively against Eternamaxed Eternatus, and the battle now functions as normal, with the box legendaries being able to damage and defeat Eternatus like normal, also being completely busted all the while. Holy shit, what were they cooking with Zacian? Eternatus is defeated. It lets out one final roar, black and red energy swirls and surrounds it before it explodes in a cascade of light, dropping back down to the ground, surely seriously damaging some of the flooring in the tower as an egg once again. The other characters can't believe it. They all break out into rapturous applause as Leon congratulates you. He can't believe the legendary hero was 2 Pokemon after all. It looks like Galar owes a lot more to these Pokemon than they could ever have known. Zacian and Zamazenta seemingly acknowledge you as worthy humans, bowing their heads to you, before once again warping out of sight with the sword and shield in their possession, presumably back to the Slumbering World. Just as everything looks to have resolved itself, one more loose end rears its ugly head again. Who should come crawling back up the stairs, clearly having just waited nearby for the situation to resolve itself, but a now dishevelled and manic looking Chairman Rose. He barges right past you all, ranting and raving about how years of careful planning and backbreaking work have just gone to waste, his tower destroyed, his designs in ruins. He's taking all the tubes and funnels that were attached to Eternatus and taking them behind the egg, presumably attaching them to something else. Leon says it's time for Rose to give it up and turn himself in to the authorities, but an enraged Rose cuts him off and tells him to shut up. How dare he tell him what to do, says Rose. Rose says he made Leon. He's the only reason Leon is the beloved champion he is. Leon asks what he means by that, and Rose scoffs. He was right about Leon. As long as he's winning, he never cares to ask questions. He enjoys the limelight too much. His head is too filled up with battle and victory to have space for anything else. Yet another illustration of how perfect his plan was. Rose tells Leon that he's an incredibly skilled battler, that much is obvious, but does he really think he was good enough to be the undisputed champion of the most competitive region in the world for 4 years running? Leon is mind-crushed at this suggestion. Is Rose telling him that he'd been rigging championship matches in favour of Leon the whole time? Not the whole time, Rose explains, but almost the whole time. Eternatus woke up only a few months after Winden was built and you became the champion, he tells Leon. He was quite relieved that Leon held onto the title himself until then, because he didn't want someone more discerning taking up the mantle. Leon can't help but ask why. Why would Rose rig the matches in his favour? Rose simply retorts, because we had money on you, Leon. Huge money. All of us. Rose explains that himself, Swordwood, Shieldbert, practically every Macrocosmos employee would put up huge bets on the invincible champion Leon's inevitable victory every time the championship match came around. It made them all rich. And when government officials and the people handling the bets grew suspicious, they just gave them some money too. And the problem went away. It's what made Macrocosmos what it is today, how it's been able to expand into transport and cargo, how it was able to pretend to expand into energy. And it would have kept going. Real quick, when I said earlier that we were going to use some touches of real-life European football culture to inform some changes to Rose's character, this is what I was referring to. FIFA, the governing body of European football, has been riddled with accusations of inside betting and match fixing for basically as long as it's been around. It's a huge part, basically, of football culture, these football executives fixing things in their favour. So I think Rose just being this kind of guy makes a lot of sense, and doing it all just to make money. He doesn't need to have some kind of deep philosophical motivation that goes any deeper than that. He's a rich guy who wants to get richer. That's a lot of the worst people in the world. That's most of real life's true villains right there. Rose says he would have expanded Macrocosmos further into Kalos, into Unova. He would have had his fingers in all the pies in the world, and Leon could have gone down as maybe the greatest champion in Pokemon history, if only he and his incessant friends left well enough alone. Leon is dumbstruck by this. He's now grappling with the idea that so many of his wins are null and void, so much of his legacy is a lie. Unsure of what to do, in silence, he runs off. Hop follows him. Alas, Rose continues, history will have to change again. The remaining characters peer around the sides of the egg to see what Rose has been plugging stuff into. Rose proudly gloats that he's found exactly what he'd hoped to see here. A power spot. Right here in Rose Tower. Which is conveniently connected to the stadium in Winden. Power spots are amazing things, Rose explains. Tiny, inconspicuous holes on the outside, but bigger on the inside. Big enough to hold the dens of even Dynamaxed Pokemon. Pocket dimensions, effectively. Possible only through the advent of Eternatus' incredible energy. Rose asks, do you know what would happen if you were to channel the power of one power spot into another? He takes the wishing stars that fell back into the room during your battle with Eternatus and starts pouring them down the hole. Especially one further amplified by the power of wishing stars? Sonia interjects, that would be too much power for either power spot to contain. She says it'd overload. Correct again, Rose replies. In other words, it would cause a huge explosion. All the characters furrow their brows. Rose surely can't be suggesting what they think he is. He bows his head, purses his lips, and takes a deep breath. Winden is my city. I built it. The thought of it continuing on without him disgusts him. If he can't control Winden, it shouldn't exist. Sonya interrupts again. She tells him that Winden is already in disrepair after a huge Dynamax Pokemon nearly destroyed the stadium. She says Leon had to stop it on the way over here, but Rose shakes his head. He says the people will rebuild. They'll continue to enjoy the delights of that stadium for years. They'll be served by the beautiful city he gave them, enjoy the pleasures of his masterpiece for years to come while he rots away in a jail cell. The very thought makes him sick, and it won't come to pass. He attaches one last tube to the power spot. The power lines that run out of the room and presumably eventually go underground and travel all the way to Winden Stadium glow a bright alien pink. And with that, all the power is routed to the Winden Stadium power spot. Piers pipes up and informs him that a big enough explosion in Winden could surely reach the tower and everyone in it as well. Rose smirks. He doesn't contest that, but he has nothing left to lose. The power's ready to go. All he has to do to send it now is flip that switch. And sure enough, that switch is right behind you. Rose tells you to get out of the way, but of course the player character shakes their head. Marnie and Piers apologise, their Pokemon are way too beat up. But they, alongside the rest of Team Yell, tell you to get this creep once and for all. Sonya knows you can do it. You've already saved Galar once. What's once more? He had to cheat you out of becoming champion. She tells you to show him how good you really are. Rose remarks that it is truly tragic that it's come to this, and the battle begins. Finally, here we are, facing down Chairman Rose. The theme song is playing, he's hell-bent on blowing up Winden, lives are at stake. Obviously things have been rejigged so that he is the true end boss of this climax. He comes after Swordwood and Shieldbert, he comes after Eternatus and the Legendaries, he is really in kind of the gets this position here. Because you've done so much more, had multiple more battles including some extra raid battles before getting here, we're going to buff Rose's team up quite a bit to give him a much more daunting presence. In the original games he has Escavalier, Ferrothorn, Berserker, Klinklang and Gigantamax Copperaja. I do like him being a steel type trainer. We've not had a villain before who specialises in that type, and it makes a lot of sense for his character. I also think we could sprinkle in some dialogue somewhere, I don't know where, but somewhere, maybe some optional dialogue from a Macrocosmos employee in the postgame or something about how Rose also filled his team with steel types to prepare for the eventuality that Eternatus would wake up earlier than expected or break free from the machinery. Rose knew that Eternatus was part poison type and was aware that he might at some point need to use his own Pokemon to subdue it. That being said, I do want to rebalance it a little bit so that it's not all steel types and you can't just throw fire, fighting and ground type moves at him over and over and win. I also want him to have 6 Pokemon on his team for this battle. We're ditching the Berserker and the Escavalier. I get why Escavalier makes sense for the original Rose because it's very knightly and I think he kind of views himself as the hero, but our Rose doesn't. He's just kind of a bad dude and I think he knows that. So we keep the Klinklang, the Ferrothorn and the Copperaja, except the Copperaja no longer Gigantamaxes and is no longer his ace. His ace now, instead, is the Gigantamax Duraludon we lifted from Raihan's team. This is much more fitting for Chairman Rose, and I kind of can't believe it wasn't on his team originally. I mean, look at it. It's a building. It's even more perfect for our interpretation of Rose, specifically because of his city building exploits. We're also adding a Colossal to his team to tank some fire type moves, and a Rotom to ignore fighting type moves with its ghost typing and hover above ground type moves with levitate. So all in all, his new team in order is Klinklang, Rotom, Ferrothorn, Colossal and Copperaja, all at level 62 now, and his ace, G-Max Duraludon, is level 65. After you win the battle, Chairman Rose has no way left of imposing his will and forcing his way over to the switch. He is utterly defeated. Raihan enters the room backed up with a bunch of Galarian police who inform Chairman Rose that he is under arrest. Raihan says Hop and Leon are downstairs and Hop updated him on the situation. As Rose is dragged away by the cops, Raihan and Piers start unplugging all the tubes from the power spot and turning all the machinery off. Sonya and Marnie congratulate you on having saved the region once again. We cut to outside, where the recurring reporters who double battle you throughout the game are trying to get some words from Rose as he's hauled into a police van. He, of course, offers no comment, so Hop snatches the camera instead and explains everything that happened to all the viewers across Galar in great detail. He explains that Swordwood and Shieldbert are not the descendants of the legendary hero, but that it is in fact two Pokemon, and that they were working in cahoots with Rose, who was using the power of the Darkest Day, which was also itself a Pokemon, to rig matches in the Championship Cup and make money off of betting on it. He tells the whole region that he and the player flew to the Slumbering Well to recruit the legendary heroes and thwart Rose's plan, and that they can prove all of it. Fade to black. We open back up in Winden a few days later. You're in the hotel with Hop. Hop talks up the Championship Cup, which is taking place again today. It's being rerun by executive order of Champion Leon, who is now also having to temporarily take up the role of League Chairman until they find a replacement for Rose. They're rerunning it today specifically to give you the second chance you deserve. All of the gym leaders of Galar have come back out to Winden to compete, as they did not too long ago, to give you this opportunity. Just as Hop is delivering this exposition, he's cut off by some fans who refer to him as Mr. Reporter Hop and ask for his autograph. Hop kind of laughs at the idea that they refer to him as Mr. Reporter and not one of the people who helped save Galar, but he admits he wasn't there to help you stop Rose and save Winden. Besides, he laughs, he could get used to the title of Ace Reporter. Maybe he already has. He's sick of having the wool, or wooloo, pulled over his eyes. It's time to learn how to be a bit more discerning. On that note, through your adventure, Hop has realised that he likes the spectacle of the League Challenge and all the sportsmanship and camaraderie that it brings to battle, more so than he actually cares about being the best. That's part of why he was always so enamoured with watching his brother Leon, and why he's so excited about today. He wishes you luck and says he'll see you later, hoping to be able to call you the champion. Now it's much like after you beat Rose and Eternatus in the original games again. Your destination is Winden Stadium to finish things up. Only this time, you're not going back just to face Leon. You've got to run the whole championship finals back, starting with Nessa. She apologises for the way things went down last time. She should have known something went wrong, but she got too sucked up in the stakes of it being the finals. This time, she promises a good, clean match and asks you to give her everything you've got. Of course, this time you beat her, and you progress through the finals like you do in the original game, with everyone thanking you for saving Galar and congratulating you as you go along, until eventually, finally, you meet Leon. Leon, understandably, is in a bit of a strange mood. What Rose told him is still playing on his mind, that an untold number of his championship defences were rigged, that he might not be the great champion he thought he was after all. Now, in this match, it's not just you looking to prove yourself, Leon needs to prove himself too. He's actually got a lot on the line here. He's got a lot more invested in this match than just defending his title, so he's locked in and he's serious. Much like with Rose, we've got a bump Leon and the whole Elite Fours levels up somewhat to account for the few extra battles that have now occurred in the main story, and because Leon still needs to be as difficult and daunting as he was in the original games, because I think his battle was actually really awesome there. A couple times throughout the battle, just before you take your turn, we cut to Winden Stadium's new match side reporter, Hop, who will be excitedly breaking down the matches play-by-play to an analyst's desk somewhere in Winden for the benefit of viewers at home. After you defeat Leon, his reaction is much the same. Initially, he's upset and frustrated, but he quickly gets over that and confesses that you deserve it. He simply cannot deny how you are the true champion of Galar. Hop runs on the field to remind Leon that he really was a true champion for Galar as well. Regardless of how his matches may have gone in light of what we learned from Rose, he represented the region like no one else could have and stood up for it by fighting against Eternatus when everyone else was down and out. This clearly cheers Leon up, and the game kind of wraps up a lot like the originals do. You're the champion now, you saved the region, the crowd roars with approval, and we fade to black one last time. This is my rewritten story for Pokemon Sword and Shield. Little bit of housekeeping stuff. Swordwood and Shieldbur obviously escaped, so the post-game will now deal with tracking them down and will somehow involve the remaining 3 or so post-game raid battles we didn't use in the main game, as well as battles with them in the Hammerlock energy plant, since we didn't use that arena in the main game and it is way too cool to go to waste. You'll also get another post-game battle with Bede and with Hop, though he won't acquire the opposite legendary to you. You'll be able to find the one you used earlier on in the Slumbering World and possibly capture it after the Swordwood and Shieldbur plot is wrapped up. I never played the DLC, but apparently this guy, Peony from the Crown Tundra, is Rose's brother? Is that a thing people know? Either way, he should talk about how Rose's whole rags to riches thing was total nonsense. Rose married a pretty high-ranking member of the Galarian government at a young age, and that's how he got all the gigs he did. Wyndon was very impressive architecturally, no doubt, but he probably shouldn't have even gotten that gig in the first place, and leapfrogged a lot of people with more experience. I don't know if this is too much information for a Pokemon game, but I'll just say it for the sake of having the thought out there. I think Peony could talk about how Rose didn't even seem to love her that much. Maybe Rose divorced her shortly after construction on Wyndon began. I don't know, that bit's not totally necessary, but it does add more to his character. Either way, I'm not writing the DLC. I haven't been keeping it in mind. If any huge changes would be necessitated to the DLC by what I've outlined here, you're just going to have to imagine I made those changes here. I suspect some people might take a bit of issue with Leon having not been the indestructible champion after all, and having just been a good enough battler that Rose was happy enough to keep in place. I don't think there was anything wrong with Leon's role as a champion in the original either, but it's just the way the story I was writing was trending that this made a lot more sense, and also I think just made him a bit more interesting, gave him a bit more of an arc. Not every character needs an arc, especially not if they're more so intended to be an obstacle to the protagonist than anything, but we've done the whole the champion is basically unbeatable and that's their whole thing before with like most champions, except Alder, who to me is by far the most interesting as a character out of all of them. I just saw an opportunity to make Leon a bit more interesting and didn't see any reason not to take it, especially because it added a lot to Rose's character as well. And that's it, and thank God, because I am exhausted. That is my patriotic duty done. That is surely the greatest length I will ever go to make my country proud. Yes, a YouTube video about Pokemon. That's probably the most it deserves. 2 quick final orders of business. Number 1, the Fudj Patreon is back in business, baby. There is a $2 tier for just supporting my work in general, and there's an $8 tier for getting early video access and your names in the end credits. Earlier this year, I said that the Fudj Patreon was basically done and encouraged everyone to move over to Palette Swap, but I have to renege on that slightly and apologise to anyone who feels a bit confused. I'll explain more of why I've done this in a community post in a few days, so look out for that. In the meantime, you are under absolutely no obligation to me, and it is of course totally up to you what you do with your money, but any support you can give to me at patreon.com/nocturnalfudge would mean the world to me, so thank you if you chip in. Also, a bit of fun news, I've recently started writing for some indie and fan games on a freelance basis, whether it be writing up side quests or just consulting on narrative decisions. I just want to put this out there, indie devs, I am open to chat. If the writing side of things isn't your forte, or you're just not super confident in your abilities in that department or whatever it may be, hit me up and let's chat and see what we can do about it. Remember, every game has writing. Even your crazy ass top-down 2D shooter has writing. Writing isn't all just dialogue and text boxes, it's the general conveyance of information, it's tone. I love Slay the Spire, but I would have some critiques for that game's writing. I think there's some problems there, and that's the kind of thing that not a lot of people might notice or think about, but I assure you, players notice it, whether subconsciously or very overtly. It is important. You can find me here on X the Everything app until its inevitable explosion, and you can also find me here on Blue Sky. And that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed. There's surely a couple minor plot holes at least, but I don't care. I'm moving on. See you all next time.